This is the Revelo Flex. It's an ultra portable electric bike. Super lightweight. It's about 33 pounds, maybe 33 and a half, about 34 with the extra pannier blocker. And it gets super small. It's like 1 foot wide by 2 feet long by like 2.5 feet tall when it's completely folded. I'm going to do that in a bit, but I just kind of want to give a quick overview of what makes this a bicycle and what goes into the electric drive aspects of it. So it comes in 4 different colors actually. This is red, white, this like neon green, and it comes with fenders. You can see these nice little plastic fenders. They're actually pretty nice in my opinion. I mean, I've seen other fenders that they aren't quite as solid, they aren't as adjustable as these, and these are pretty good length. So that's nice for utility, because sometimes when you're commuting it can get, rainy or snowy or whatever. It's good to have some protection. We've got Shimano V brakes, front and rear, and that's a decent choice. They provide definitely good stopping power, and there's even this little inline, call it like a power modulator. And the way that works is when you really bear down on the brakes, see, at first it starts braking, but if you really squeeze, that thing kind of moves. So there's like a spring in there, so it's not just a direct cable, and that helps you avoid skidding, or it's the front brake, so it could be a little bit unstable if you overdo it. Got this nice little bar end mirror for safety, a bell, these decent rubber grips. The whooshing brake levers, these are kind of cheaper, but they do have integrated motor inhibitor, so anytime you activate those, it's going to cut power. So just good stuff, like decent components all the way around. Little kickstand. This is a bit of a prototype version. They're premiering this through Kickstarter, October 2015. So this isn't quite the finished version, but they said they've gone through 3 different iterations until getting to what they consider the production ready build. And this kickstand will be improved. It's actually going to lock to the frame so it won't spin. Right now it spins a little bit because it's just on that axle bolt. It's really cool to hear about that. I had a bunch of questions, and I reached out to them, and they were able to kind of quickly answer all of them and give me really thoughtful answers. This battery pack here I want to call out. It's called the Frog Pack in the industry. I'm not sure why. It just looks like a little frog, and it kind of like a lot of times mounts to the seat post. The problem with it is seat post is usually higher up. Okay, first of all, it's better to have weight low and centered on the bike. So you've got a battery that's higher up, and with that one mounting point, you can see, I mean, it's kind of plastic and stuff. There is some metal inside, but there are problems where people would go off a curb and it'd like crack and mess up the battery pack. So what they've done is they've moved it down to this special extra tube that they built right onto the frame, and then they've reinforced it with this strut arm on the left side. Okay, so that's really great. Neat to see a company taking an existing piece of hardware like the Frog Pack that's a little bit easier to come by, a little bit more affordable, because that's going to keep the bike more affordable, but then upgrading it a little bit and addressing some of those shortcomings. So I love to see that. This pack, in addition to being fairly small and compact, it's relatively lightweight, but you get decent power. In the batteries here, they're using Samsung cells. It's 36 volt, 10 amp hours, and it's about 6 pounds for that battery total. So not bad. You take that off the bike, and then this is a 20-something pound bike instead of a 33, 34 pound bike. So we're talking really small and lightweight. And a lot of times, if you look at other bikes that are kind of similar, they don't let you pedal, and a lot of times they're less of a bike. They have smaller wheels. So I'm thinking something like the Yike bike. It's this funky looking kind of like sit down, steer from behind bike that it's unique, very iconic, but maybe it's not quite as functional. It's definitely more expensive. And then there's something called the RB, and again, it has like these foot pegs in the front, doesn't actually have pedals. And then you get up to something like the Ejo Epic Lite, or the Enzo bike. There are a lot of other bikes that they fold in half at the frame, but the battery's completely concealed. This one's much easier to take off, much quicker, and it's lighter. Similar price point though, and to be honest, the pedals on this bike, it really not my favorite bike to pedal around, and that's because you might notice the pedals they're connected directly to the front wheel. This is like a penny farthing bike, the first traditional bike that was ever made in like the 1880s. They didn't have a chain. They didn't have like a gear cluster or anything like that. They just, you turn the cranks and it turned the wheel. And that was a huge wheel. Remember, if you can imagine, there's like a tiny wheel in the back, huge wheel in the front, and really funky to ride. They've kind of recycled that idea with this bike because it keeps it lightweight. It's very durable. But the challenge is that anytime you push on those pedals, see, it kind of impacts your steering too. And there's really just one speed to pedal at. And so, you get kind of starting from 0, it's a little bit harder to pedal. And then once you get up to like 7 to 10 miles per hour, you're really spinning, and that's about it. The bike under electric power can get up to like 17 miles per hour, like 17.4. So that's actually pretty good. A lot of times these folding electric bikes, especially the ultra portable versions, they only go to like 15 miles per hour. And in some ways that's okay, because the faster you get going with the smaller wheels and stuff, you can get like a little bit of speed wobble and you're closer to the ground, and it's just, you don't want to overdo it. This isn't like a full size, like a Specialized Turbo or a Stromer ST2 or something that really feels solid and fluid. That's a trade-off that you always have to make when you're doing like a folding bike. So I think, this bike is all about compromise. It's about finding the right fit. If you're going to the subway, you're going to the bus stop, maybe you have an RV or a boat or something, this would be a great option. One of the other things it sort of lacks is suspension. However, they do have this really nice cush saddle. It's got the rubber bumpers. I see this on a lot of bikes. That's okay. They have 2 versions of the bike, and if you upgrade to kind of like the Pro version, they give you a telescoping suspension seat post. There are even better suspension seat posts available. You can get like a Thudbuster or a Suntour NCX. The thing is, this has like a 30.9 millimeter diameter, which is a little bit wider. A lot of the seat post suspensions are 27.2. So they have a shim, and I'll link to that in the full review, that, basically takes the smaller diameter and makes it a little bigger, so it'll work with this. Of course, that's going to add weight, and then it's going to mean that the seat post can't slide all the way down because you've got this suspension element in here. So, kind of keep that in mind. I think the real limiting factor on height is actually the handlebars when you fold this all up. Just something to be aware of, and then of course that adds extra money. So the base level of this, the Flex, it's like $16.99, which is a decent price point for something like this, especially so purpose-built like that. You don't get these rigid pedals. You get like these folding plastic pedals, and you don't get a pannier blocker. And then you have kind of more of these basic brakes. If you upgrade, I think it's like $18.99, you get these awesome pedals. I really like them. I'm a big fan of Welgos. They don't fold. Instead, you kind of push down on that ring and they come right off. So that was really cool. It makes it much more narrow, definitely more compact, but when you put them on, they feel really, really solid. So I love that. And of course, you get that nice pannier blocker, but you only get one. And that's because on this side, that's where the bike folds in half. And you can see the key is actually in the battery ignition slot. It has to remain in when riding. That's something I complain about a lot because there's some jingling, and on some bikes it's like up here by your feet and legs. It's not the case on this bike. At least it's way out of the way. When you fold the bike, the key and everything is protected by that front portion of the frame, the wheel and everything. So, again, it's like, I think that's a decent compromise, and especially because you're keeping it cheap with this battery pack. The whole bike gets a year-long warranty, by the way, which is pretty solid. I think it's lifetime on the frame and fork too. So they're really going the extra, the distance to try to support people, and give you some confidence when you buy this thing. So yeah, there's those 2 different versions, and then they're going to have their own pannier. I'm using one here that works really well. This is a Axiom. I think it's like Seymour DLX20. I really like it because it's got kind of like a bungee lock down right here with these 2 plastic clamps. It's got decent storage capacity, and there's even like a bottle holder built onto the side. That's another thing I always comment on with electric bikes. There's usually not room for a bottle cage because there's like batteries and extra stuff going on. That's the case for this frame, but at least they've got that option with the pannier. And for an ultra portable, that's just phenomenal. I mean, I don't think ElectricBikes has anything like that, like an option to put on a bottle cage, or the Irby. A lot of these bikes, it's like tough luck, no bottle. Hopefully you're in the city. If you really need water, you just stop by a fast food restaurant or something. But with this, you do get that, and I think that's a huge step up. Here's the charger. It's like a 2-amp charger, pretty lightweight, a couple pounds. You could easily toss that into the pannier, take it along with you if you wanted. And then again, the pannier itself really matches nicely, kind of blends in, and it's very well reinforced with another sort of custom bit of tubing right here. So you can tell that this is the third iteration. You know, there's just a lot of little extras that they've done. So I'm going to jump back in here, talk about the drive specs and stuff. So the front wheel is 20 inches by 1.75. You know, that's a decent size. Like, it's not the widest, so you're not going to get quite as much like squish and comfort going that way, but it's pretty efficient and it's a lot better than a road bike. And then having that larger diameter, that kind of empowers you to pedal, and it gives you a little bit more steering stability, and it absorbs some of the bumps and stuff. On the rear, this is 16 inches, so much less common. You do see it on some portables, but it's less common, 16 by 1.75, okay? And being smaller, that's what allows the battery and everything to be a little lower to the ground, the panniers and everything, for more stability. And it actually gives the motor a mechanical advantage, okay? Because the motor isn't having to work quite as hard to turn like a super wide wheel, it's smaller. And both of these, actually being smaller, they're going to support a little bit more weight. I think the max recommended weight for this bike is like 220 pounds, so, you know, it's kind of decent. And I had some friends who were a little bit heavier who tried it and, you know, had no problem. They enjoyed zipping around on it. But it's good that the wheel's a little bit smaller because it's going to help you climb. It actually feels pretty satisfying power-wise. And this is only a 250 watt geared motor. And I'm not sure what brand it is. Just kind of generic, but it says 250 watt to 350 watts. So 350 is probably the peak output, but the nominal rating is 250. It's decent, kind of blends in and everything. And then, as we said, the battery pack, lithium-ion Samsung cells, 36 volt, 10 amp hour, which in my opinion is pretty solid for a bike this size. It's definitely above average. And, you know, 36 volt, that's like higher voltage for a 250 watt motor. A lot of times I see like 24 volt batteries, and they're just not going to go as far. This thing's rated like 20 miles is what they say. I'd estimate like 15 to 20 miles, something like that. It's still pretty good. Of course, you can pedal, but as we're going to see, like, it's not the most fun process to pedal this thing around. So kind of keep that in mind. I'm going to set the camera down and then fold this so you can get some idea of what that looks like. Okay, so got the kickstand up. Give a quick release on the handlebars like this. Slide it down. Put the mirror facing forwards. Might want to lock this down. Slide the seat all the way down, like that. Lock it down again. Make sure this front crank is out a little bit. Release the middle. And then you just sort of fold it in half. And this crank arm, this is what I was talking about. You can take off the pedal, but if you leave it on, then you want it to be kind of facing forward so that it can kind of stay out of the way. Now you can actually wheel the bike along just like this, kind of using that back wheel. The other thing about the production version is that there are going to be magnets in here that'll keep it from coming unfolded. So that's kind of nice. That's another little extra that just makes this more functional. Kind of see it from all the different sides here. Okay, so I'm putting the pannier on before we take a test ride. You can see I've hooked it down there. Just use the bungee thing and kind of connect it right here. The plastic clips down, and it looks really good in my opinion. You know, stays out of the way. It's the right size because this is a little bit, you know, a little bit narrower. It kind of matches the bike. Okay, we got the kickstand down there. Kick it up. I have the pedals in this sort of resting position right now, which means they're both forward and they're acting a lot more like pegs. And you can see my feet just sort of balance evenly together when they're up versus this, which is the pedaling position. So I'm going to pedal for a moment and just, you know, pay attention to how that impacts the steering and everything. And I'm doing this one-handed, but you can see that with each pedal stroke, you know, it's actually impacting the handlebars a little bit. And I am trying my best to keep that straight. I'm not exaggerating this. Like, there's definitely, you know, it definitely impacts steering. And as I said before, you really only have that one pedaling gear. So, you know, that's about as fast as I can pedal stably. You know, we're not going all that fast. And by the way, you know, we can't tell how fast we're going in part because there's no LCD display on the basic version. The upgraded one does have a nice little LCD unit that should show you a more precise battery level indicator, an odometer, speedometer, some of those things. And it actually has like a female USB port, so you could plug in your mobile device, which is kind of cool. I love to see that. More and more e-bikes are doing that. With the base model, you just get this kind of, you know, basic LED console with red, yellow, and green, designating how full the battery pack is. I do like that you can disengage the throttle by pressing that red button. See, now nothing happens. That's useful if you're like folding the bike or maybe quickly lifting it onto a platform or something like that, and then you can reactivate the throttle. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the pedaling, talked a little bit about the comfort. Because your feet are a little bit more forward and your body position is in this kind of like, you know, upright but relaxed position, I found that when I'm coming up to a curb or a bump, my instinct is to kind of put pressure on my feet and to elevate my butt so that my back and spine aren't receiving a lot of impact. Well, when I do that, especially in the pedaling position, it immediately like jerks the handlebar one way or another, and it feels unstable. So that's one of the things you want to keep in mind. The most stable riding position for me is you press that little silver thing in, kind of rotate the pedal backwards, and there we go. This is the most stable. And you can still kind of do that, like lift yourself up, but because the pedals are even now, you're not getting that turning issue. And you're also not having to worry about your pants or whatever kind of rubbing on the tire. So I like that it's technically a bicycle, but I think most of the time I'd be using this more like a little scooter. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the throttle and show you how this looks. Kind of see they're nice and even, but my body position is still really far back. You know, kind of like I'm sitting in a recliner chair or something, and that's comfortable, and I can see where I'm going really nicely, but it doesn't give me a lot of, you know, spring and comfortability through my legs. I can't really stand up without pushing myself backwards. So keep that in mind. I'm gonna go ahead and accelerate to full speed now. For a little thing, you know, it gets going. And it's great that you've got two brake levers here, because a lot of times you just have one with these ultra compact electric bikes. And I think it comes in handy. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and turn. You know, feels pretty good, feels solid. It coasts well, and it's relatively quiet. Then of course, if you want to pedal, you can kick up that right pedal. I'm gonna try to do that. This is not the easiest bike to ride no-handed. So I'm gonna make the switch real quick and then kick this up. Now I'm back into pedaling mode. So, you know, as you can see, you might only use the pedaling for climbing hills, you know, when the bike really needs the extra help, or, you know, it does work and stuff, but it almost gives you an arm workout, because you've got to kind of keep that handlebar from getting crazy. So good. This is my friend Kevin. How's it going, buddy?
Good.
You're gonna try out the Revelo Flex. We did it yesterday, so you're already a little bit accustomed to this, but you know, go for it, and I'd love to get your feedback. Whoop. There he goes. Very nice. Sometimes it takes a minute with those unique pedals, and he's putting his foot down there for stability. We can just come over here. There we go. Okay. Does someone else want to hop on that? Well, so do you want the pedals down, or do you want to try it with them up, like for pedaling?
Let's try down.
Down. Oh, go for it.
Okay.
There we go, zipping away. Yeah, I mean, how did you feel about the size and about the power and stuff?
The size is good, the power is good, but when you turn, it feels really goofy because your feet, the balance.
Yeah, you're looking good. There we go. Whoa, whoa. Got those brakes under control. Do you want to try it with the pedal lock this time? Yeah, I'd love to get your feedback. So we just lock it forward, go easy, because it does take some getting used to. There you go. You're getting it. No worries, no worries. There we go. Feel like you're pedaling full speed?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach high speed, but it's
Nice.
pretty weird.
It's weird is the word. So that's the thing about the pedals. Yeah, a little bit different.
I mean,
Because
if
of
you
the
have the
front wheel.
pedals on the wheel, when you try to go fast, like
Yeah.
this goes like
Well,
that.
you were also in line. You want to try it out? And should I unlock the pedal or?
Yes, please.
Okay, and here we can push this red button and it turns off the motor so we don't have any, it doesn't get out of control. Okay, there we go.
The seat for me, please.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah. Here we go. Do you want to hold that
Yeah,
for a
sure.
second? Thanks, man. Okay. Let's take it all the way
But
down.
I do think it's neat that it folds in half to go into your office or on the bus or the
Or
train,
like in your locker.
in your locker.
Right,
Yeah.
like school. Sweet. Thanks, man. Here we go. Nice and easy.
So you gotta turn it on. How do you turn it on?
Oh yeah, it's that
I got
button
it.
again. There we go. You're doing it. Yeah, you got it. You got the turn down.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
It's kinda weird. It feels like you're gonna fall over if you're not careful, but like it's not that bad.
Do you have a normal bike?
I do.
You do. Could you see yourself, replacing it with something like this?
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's fun and kind of
yeah,
zippy.
and it's faster too. So like to get to school, it would make more sense for me.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
great to get a second opinion and
Thanks
to
for letting us try
see it. Yeah, you guys are great. Thank you all. So for the full write-up on it and other folding electric bikes, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. And if you get this thing, definitely sound off on what you like or other accessories that have worked well for you. That always helps people out and it's really nice to do. So, I think that's it. Ride safe.